So the Tao is a mandala, a circle of life. As you can see, the Tao symbol is a circle. Within each side of it, there's a little circle, okay? Now let's take the example of male and female. No one is purely male and no one is purely female. Everyone has the opposite energy and essence within themselves, okay? It's just that I'm predominantly a male and I have a feminine side. That's why I wear this. The ladies always comment about this. They love my shawl, because it's an expression of my feminine side, right? And I'm not afraid of showing that because it's part of what I am, okay? And women also have a masculine side, an assertive side, and thank God that women are taking a major role in leadership now in the world, which I think is going to change the world a lot, because we need that, okay? So we have both of these essences. As a matter of fact, in the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus talks about that the way to open to heaven is when male and female is balanced within you. And of course, that's not in the Bible. The Christians got rid of that in the 4th century, the teachings of the kind of Gnostic Bible, the Gnostic Gospels. But if you look at the Gospel of Thomas and Philip and Mary Magdalene, you'll see teachings that are much more similar to Buddhism and Taoism and things like that are in there. It talks about male and female harmony within the self as being the key to nirvana or heaven. Okay? And Tao is also known as the source or the primordial unmanifested ground for the manifested. So if we look around the room, what do you see? You see people, you see chairs, you see the floor, we see the ceiling, you see the walls, the clocks. We see a lot of things. But what we oftentimes miss is there's something fundamental here that allows all that to be. And what would that be? Space, right? If you didn't have space, you wouldn't have things, right? Without the space, there would be no things. But we don't see that. That's kind of the ground or the primordial basis of the manifested. We have to have the nothingness or the essential ground for things to manifest. The Buddhist term for Tao is Dhamma, means truth. In the Buddhist term, we have the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. The Buddha, the enlightened one or the awakened one. The Dhamma is the truth, the reality, and the Sangha is the community. Okay? So Tao and Dhamma are very similar in terms of their actual definition. Truth, reality, and oneness. Interdependency. This is a very important thing to understand when you're talking about spiritual alchemy and transformation. 2,500 years ago, the Buddha said, everything is connected. There isn't anything that's really separate. So there isn't really a me or an I. That's just a story we tell ourselves, in our mind. And we focus on that, okay? But in reality, it's not real. Everything is dependent. Everything is interconnected, interdependent, okay? And the alchemic process is the ability to see that. Because generally we look at things from an ego consciousness, a separate consciousness, as opposed to a unitive consciousness. Okay? So that's really the alchemic process of moving from ego, separate, alone, divided feeling of myself, this little me, this little story I tell myself, and the unitive consciousness of understanding that we're all connected, we're all family, we're all from the same source. That's why the reading this morning was about that. There's a verse in that reading that says, what is it? I was born in swaddling clothes, and there was no king that wasn't also born in swaddling clothes. We're all the same, really. Monkeys, what's the difference between the DNA of a monkey and a human? Isn't it like tiny, right? So humans are all the same. We're all the same. We all have diversity in our expression, but essentially we're all the same. That means we all have the same equality, we all have the same value. Okay? If your hair, Sylvie, wasn't like that right now, the universe would be different. That's how important every piece and everything is. Without it being what it is right now, it would be different. Something would be missing if you weren't here or you weren't there. Okay, So every little thing, every person is that valuable to the universe, because without it, it would be totally different. So that's the essence of this alchemical process, of moving away from looking at life in a divided way with a little story of myself, in seeing the unity of all things and the oneness of all things, and treating life as one. Okay? Because in essence, one cannot exist without the other. Let's talk about unity and diversity. Can you have unity without diversity? Unity would be meaningless if you didn't have diversity, right? And diversity would be meaningless if you didn't have unity. Well, at first, on the surface, the rational mind may say, how can that be, they seem to be opposite, but actually they're not. They're complements. They're interdependent. You cannot have light without dark, right? What is darkness? It's the absence of light. And if you're in a dark room and you just turn on a little candle, everything changes because you added the element of light, right? You can't have life without male and female. You can't have plants without stamen and pistil, okay? So these seeming opposites are not really opposites. They're not a conflict they are built into it. It's complementary. Life is not logical, it's dialectic. There's a complementary there, and that's how sometimes people miss this, okay? So alchemy occurs when our soul consciousness, which is unity, can see and feel the interdependence and unity of seemingly diverse ideas, expressions, forms, cultures, races, religion, art, etc. Samsara transforms into nirvana. And that's why I love about the Unitarian Universalists is they get that already. You look at the signs around it, one planet, and all the signs are talking about recognizing and honoring all the diversity in the world. Right? This one is nice, but I like to take it a little further. Coexist means kind of tolerance, right? Tolerance. And that's a good stepping stone from killing each other, war, my religion's better than yours, like we had in the past, and we still have, in the world. Recently I was supposed to go to India on a 2-month healing tour, and I was all geared up to go. And at the last moment, the sponsor, the first sponsor had bailed out because of the flooding in India. The second sponsor was all gung-ho, and then he noticed that one of my names is Ahmed, that was given to me by the Muslim faith. And he said, what is this name, Ahmed? I said, well, it was given to me by the Muslim faith. My second wife is a Muslim from Indonesia. And he said, oh, I'm sorry. I cannot sponsor you. I said, why? I'm universal. Well, I'm not. If you're promoting Islam, forget it. So this exists in the world. It's amazing that it still exists, but it does. An extreme example of that is wars. Countries kind of fight for political reasons, but there's an underlying tone of religious intolerance there. So tolerance is good, but what we need to get beyond tolerance is family. The family of man, of humanity. Because that's really the only truth there is, that we're all one family. We're all from one source. Okay? And that's what transforms samsara into nirvana. So let's talk about characteristics of ego consciousness. Views life as separate entity and story, always comparing, discriminating, and labeling. Analytical. This tends to create a feeling of dissatisfaction with my life. I'm all alone, no one takes care of me, complain, things like that. And then disharmony and judgment of others and myself. And judging others, that's not that hard to stop, but judging yourself, sometimes people can't stop. And when that happens, depression, suicide, things happen like that. And doing, ego's more in line with the doing side of the equation. It's always got to do something to validate its existence, because basically when you live in the ego consciousness, you feel alone and separated and isolated. And you're trying to find the value in yourself, okay? So those are the basics of ego. And if you're living totally in that, we call that the ego capsule. You're totally wrapped up in yourself. And this This is hell. This is what the definition of hell is. Whether you're alive or not, if that's where your consciousness is and your energy, you're in hell. Pre and post-mortem. Now, characteristics of soul consciousness. See life as united and interdependent, non-judgmental or discriminating, equality, harmony. The Dalai Lama once said that the basis of compassion isn't a moral thing. It's when you recognize the interconnection of everything and all humans. This becomes the basis of real compassion, because now you and I are one. You're my sister. You're part of me. How can I hurt you? This is where compassion comes from. The recognition of the interconnectivity. It's not some religion is giving you a moral standard. You've got to be compassionate, otherwise you're going to hell. Nobody likes that. That's not where real compassion comes from. It comes from the recognition of the interconnection of all of us. Okay? Unity of consciousness. From unity of consciousness comes satisfaction, happiness, deep bliss, love, synchronicity, and being. Okay? The being side of it, which is primary and fundamental. So the Tao of unity and diversity, the Tao of spiritual transformation of alchemy, is this process. Moving from, and it's not that you annihilate the ego, but you recognize its true function in your life as a way of relating to others. But its ultimate purpose is to serve your heart and soul. Many people don't even know we have a soul. They're not aware of it. They just know their mind and their heart. Okay? But you also have an essence, a connection to the essence, and that's your soul. Right? And when you feel that, then the being becomes stronger, and then it influences your doing. You're doing from being. You're not just doing out of your ego desire to dominate or accumulate or fight or something like that. It's coming from your soul. And you can recognize it in some human beings. They live from their soul. They don't live from their mind, their ego. They live from their soul. Okay, a prime example, I think, is Oprah Winfrey. It's a very soulful person. She lives from her soul, and then she has so much influence on other people. It's a really good example. I mean, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, all these people, Jesus, they all live from their soul. That's why they were controversial, and that's why some of them got attacked and even killed. Okay? Actually, those three, Jesus, Gandhi, and Martin Luther King, all died because they lived from their soul, not their ego. And the people's ego that were stimulated didn't like that and killed them. You know. So, but this is our path, you know, to go back to the being side of things, so that we can live from the soul and allow the ego to be healthy and fulfill its normal function. This is the realization of Tao. When you go through that process, some describe it as like the caterpillar and the butterfly. Okay, that kind of process. And sometimes it's quite challenging. Sometimes, for some people, because of their karma or whatever, they must go through some extreme type of transformation. St. John the Divine called it the dark night of the soul, where the ego identification has to be broken so that you can start to feel your real essence in the soul. Okay? So that's realization of Tao, is when you can know yourself as a divine soul first, and then your ego is the function of your personality in the world. Okay? Now, let's translate this from concept into energy, because remember I said Tao is energy. In the Tao teaching, in Taoism, there is something called Qigong. Right? Some of you practice it here. I know a few faces that go to either my class or what she leads or whatever at the senior center. Qigong simply means energy work or energy practice. It's ancient. It's 4,000 years old. And in the teaching of Qigong, you basically, unlike the chakra system of yoga, which is 7 energy centers, there's basically 3 fundamental energy centers and then many minor ones. But the first one is here, right here, in the mind. And we call this the mental and intentional energy center, right? And we need that to guide our life, to do things, to get motivated, to think and plan and whatever. The second one is here in the heart chakra, which is the middle